Today's Take 5 with the Saints, February the 11th, we look at Frances Jane Van Alstyne. Who you say? That's a mouthful. Well, to some of you, you might recognize one of her main aliases, Fanny Crosby. You still don't recognize that name, and it might be possible because if you grew up as an Episcopalian, have the 1982 or even the 1940 hymnal as your primary music guide, her name doesn't appear in those resources. But if you have had any exposure whatsoever to American evangelical religions, Baptist, Church of Christ, Presbyterian, whatnot, you have undoubtedly come across her hymn writing. Fanny Crosby, over the course of her life, wrote over 8,000 sacred songs, many of which have turned into very popular and well-known hymns in the evangelical tradition. And on top of that, like some famous performers of our own day, like Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder and Andrea Bocelli, Fanny Crosby also wrote and sang all of this music while suffering blindness at a very young age. So, look forward to looking at her life today. The scripture that is attached to her feast day comes out of Isaiah chapter 42, verses 10 through 12 and verse 16. Sing to the Lord a new song, his praise from the end of the earth. Let the sea roar and all that fills it, the coastlands and their inhabitants. Let the desert and its towns lift up their voice, the villages that Kedar inhabits. Let the inhabitants of Selah sing for joy. Let them shout from the tops of the mountains. Let them give glory to the Lord and declare his praise in the coastlands. I will lead the blind by a road they do not know. By paths they have not known, I will guide them. I will turn the darkness before them into light, the rough places into level ground. These are the things I will do, and I will not forsake them. Fanny Crosby, as she was known, was born in 1820 in upstate New York, and while she was not born blind, she suffered blindness at a very young age from complications from a childhood illness that she suffered. And as a result, she entered the New York Institute for the Blind, where after graduating, she would teach for a number of years. When she was 38 years old, she married, where her other name comes from, Alexander Van Alstyne, who was a fellow musician who was also blind as well. Now, Fanny Crosby and her husband were both Methodists, so you might be asking the question, why does she appear in the calendar of saints for the Episcopal Church? Well, again, while her hymns may not directly appear in our 1982 hymnal, a lot of the hymns that come out of the 19th century that show up in our hymnal that have American origins were undoubtedly influenced by Fanny Crosby. And in some of our other musical resources, there are some Fanny Crosby hymns that are included. Now, one of her most notable hymns, again, known those of us who come out of the evangelical tradition, is a hymn called Blessed Assurance. But one of the amazing things with Fanny Crosby is whereas you usually would write the lyrics for a hymn and then compose the music to go with it, it was often the reverse for her. In fact, she became so prolifically known that people would write tunes for a potential hymn, and they would just give it to her, and she would often write lyrics that would go into that particular tune, which is how Blessed Assurance came to be. She was not just a hymn writer either. She wrote poetry, secular poetry. She wrote even some patriotic hymns that were recorded and music that was of other genres. So she was not just a sacred music singer. She had other interests and other talents as well. She died at the age of 95 in Connecticut, but not until the fact that the American gospel music genre, at least that of the 19th century, of white American Christian gospel music, I should say, was undoubtedly, if she was not the prolific and innovator of that genre, she was undoubtedly the one who influenced it the most during the time in which she was alive. And so she is in our Festival of Saints because of the fact that much of our music tradition today is indirectly influenced by her long and very impressive body of work that she offered, all while doing, in the midst of, for those of us who aren't blind, a perceived disability, but in her own words, blindness in her eyesight caused her to have a vision to be able to hear the sweet music of God and write it down for others to enjoy. Lots more to read about this amazing woman. I invite you to do so, but please, as you honor and remember her today, please do not underestimate the contribution she has made to our life of worship as 21st century Episcopalians and American Christians today. Please join me tomorrow for our next saint. I look forward to seeing you then. Take care.